In this video, we'll be looking at amplitude of sine and cosine graphs. The absolute value of A is the amplitude of the graphs of y equal A sine x and y equal A cosine x. When the center line of the graph is the x-axis, then A and negative A will be the maximum and minimum values of y. Let's look at some graphs on the graphing calculator. Right here we see a sine curve. Notice that the maximum is 1 and the minimum is -1. That's because A is understood to be 1 here. Also, if we do a trace, we can see that the maximum occurs when x is equal to 90 degrees. I'm in degree mode right now. And then it hits the axis at 180 degrees. And then it hits the min at 270 degrees. And then it heads back up and hits the axis at 360. Now if we go ahead and move to the left, this is our periodic function. It's going to be a min at -90, and then it hits the axis at -180, and it hits the max of 1 at -270, and hits the axis at -360. Now this is a periodic function, so it will keep repeating that over and over and over. Now let's keep sine curve on the screen, and let's look at what happens when I graph 3 sine x. You'll notice that the places where the sine curve crossed the axis are the same places where the y equal 3 sine x crosses the axis. Also, the maximum point is at the same point where the sine curve hits the maximum. So if we do a trace on this one, and let's go ahead and move over to the left of our screen. We have crossing the axis at -360, which is the same place where sine x crosses. And then if I go up to my maximum point, it hits the maximum at -270, but the maximum point is y equals 3, which is the a value of our function right there. Let's look at a few more points. Hits the axis at -180, and then a min of -3 when x is -90, and so forth. All right, let's look at, instead of 3, let's look at 0.5 as our amplitude. and graph that one. There's our sine curve and our y equal 0.5. Now if we trace our 0.5 curve, you'll notice that it hits a min at -90 again, but this time it has a y value of -0.5. Let's come over here. Again, 0, 0 is where it crosses the y-axis, and then it'll hit its max at x equal 90, and the max is 0.5. Let's look at one other thing with the sine curve. I want to delete this one and insert a -4. Okay, this time my a value is -4. My amplitude, though, is the absolute value of -4, which is 4. So the amplitude on this new graph is 4. Let's look at how this graph looks. There's my sine curve, and there's my -4. Now notice I usually gauge from the origin. My usual sine curve starts at the origin and heads upward and then down in a roller coaster type periodic function. But when my a value is negative, instead of starting here and heading up, I start at the origin and head down. So whenever you have a negative a value, you need to head in the negative direction. Let's look at a trace on this one. We're tracing the -4 sine x. And so starting at the origin, 0, 0, when x is 90, my y value is -4. But it still has that same sine curve. So where the usual y equals sine x was usually at -1, this one is at +4. I also now want to look at cosine, so let's change this to cosine and clear this out for the time being. This is my cosine curve. So whenever you are starting with the cosine curve, it starts on the y-axis at +1. So it starts at its maximum and then heads down on the right side and heads down on the left side. Let's do a trace on this one. So when our angle is 0 degrees, my cosine is 1. Then it hits the axis. When my angle is 90 degrees, and then it hits a minimum when my angle is 180, and then it comes back and hits the axis at 270. Should come back up to 1 when my angle is 360. Now let's look at what happens when I have 3 cosine x Again, the places where it crosses the axis are the same. So all you're doing is changing your amplitude. The places where it crosses the axis are still the same angles. But instead of hitting 1, notice on this one I graphed 3 cosine x. And if I trace, I'll start here at the y-axis. When x is 0, when my angle is 0, now my y value is 3 instead of 1. And it'll cross the axis at x equal 90. It'll hit negative 3 when x equals 180. Cross the axis at 270, and then hit positive 3 y value when x equals 360. Now the negative a value behaves the same way as the sine did. Let me just show you that one. Let's try on negative 3. So first is my cosine curve, and then my negative cosine curve. Notice that instead of positive 1 here, it's starting at negative 3 and then doing the cosine curve. But the places where the curve crosses the axis are your stable points that you'll use to graph your curve.